You know what? Most women don't want their husbands failing.
Mm.
It creates insecurity and a place where they don't want to go. So if they're failing at something, they just want, no. I don't want to hear that.
Mm.
But the fact is we all fail, and it's okay to fail and pick yourself up and be all right.
Mm.
And you got to be okay with that.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of The Naked Gospel, where we talk about issues around sexuality, everything from pornography to sex trafficking and everything in between. Today I'm hanging out with Theressa Hesch. She is one of the co-founders. Her and her husband, something like 18 years ago, started Proven Ministries. And I'm excited to have her on. We sat down with her husband not too long ago, heard his side of the story and just his experience through the damage and the pain and then the recovery and the redemption. And so it only makes sense to sit down with his wife. This kind of conversation is valuable for two reasons. One, pornography is just streamlined. It's just mainstream everywhere today, and it's hard to often see the repercussions, the consequences of it. So sitting down and seeing that is helpful, especially from a wife's vantage. So whether you're single or married, as a guy, just looking at this, it's easy to delude ourselves into thinking that it's not that big an issue. And today we'll see that it is. The second thing is not a lot of women get kind of airtime on how this has damaged them and hurt them and impacted them. And so for those two reasons, I'm just super excited to be able to get time with her and thankful to be here with you guys. Hey, Theressa.
Hey.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you for being here with us. It was really cool to sit down with your husband and hear his journey. He's obviously very candid.
Yes, he
about
is.
all that stuff.
Uh-huh.
And he walked us through the history of it. Kind of a big shot lawyer in DC, and had this struggle even going into marriage.
Yeah.
And then it culminates with your friend at a certain point where he makes advances upon her. And thankfully nothing happens, but that's an awful sort of moment. And then just years and years of recovery, as well as just real redemption in that story, where like he's then affirmed by elders after years of this, and then starts leading other men through it, and then the creation of Proven Ministries. To hear you guys are close to 20 years later.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear your story and all of that, and even like starting with your perception of the relationship before any of that came out to that event, and then subsequently afterwards.
Yeah. You know, part of my story really starts before I had gotten married. I was raised in an alcoholic home, and this is why it's so important, because I really had no idea anything about sexual addiction. I mean, I knew about alcohol addiction because of my parents, but other than that, really not a lot. But being raised in that home, you kind of just go on, okay? Your parent could be drunk one day, you just move on to the next.
Yeah.
So I was used to putting my head in the sand and not really dealing in truth, more like denial.
Yeah.
And so when things happened with Joel, when we got married, I thought everything was fine. It really, I knew there was some lack of connection we had, but other than that, I thought everything was fine until all of a sudden the 7-year mark hit and this thing just exploded in my face. And I realized that part of my journey was going to have to be learning to live with truth and being okay with my eyes wide open, rather than, instead of dousing the pain and just thinking, okay, I would just plow through another year, and it became more about relational, more about connection, more about emotional connection, rather than anything else. But for me, it really started with that I had to learn to deal in truth.
That event is obviously loaded. When he tells the story, for him, it's just stuff he's been carrying for years, and then he finally just spills it all over you.
Oh, yeah.
And for him, he's like, I feel so relieved, like,
the weight is off my shoulders. I could be honest with you.
Whereas for you, like, it's earth shattering.
He put from his shoulders onto ours
Yeah.
and onto mine. And that's what ends up happening with a lot of women is the men come clean for the first time in their lives. They're like, wow, this has been going on and I just want you to know. But the problem then is what does the wife do with the burden of knowing all this? And not only the burden of it, but also the pain of it, the disappointment, the what does he think of me then? What do I even think of me? How do I deal with how he thinks of these images versus me, and what that does to who I am as a woman of Christ? So it's really difficult to have to come through that.
Vulnerable question. Obviously, that's like identity shaking stuff. I imagine a lot of couples counseling and individual counseling has proceeded from that event over the years. How long until like you started to feel like you could be yourself again in that relationship?
It was probably about 2 years or so.
Yeah.
That was probably the first 2 years are really rocky.
It's pretty dense.
Yeah. And you go up and down and you're like a whirlwind. Some days are better than others. Some I'm like, okay, Lord, you and me. It's you and me through this. I got it. I know who I am in Christ. And then I'm like in the depths of despair the next. And it is really an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
And but part of that for me is realizing I could not, like a lot of wives, I wanted him to get help and I wanted him to be better. I did. But if I made that my focus, I was going to be really disappointed. Not that Joel didn't do really well. He did. He did everything he could to rebuild trust. He was wonderful during that time. But at the same time, if he didn't do that, then I would go down in the dumps. So I'd be like this, even worse of a roller coaster ride. Everything was based on him. So it really wasn't about this relationship. More, it was about my relationship with God.
Yeah.
Had to become more solid.
What is you talked about that transition of kind of the relationship before and after of, okay, like pressing into just being vulnerable and transparent with each other, and that's not something you guys had before. So that hits on this follow-up question, but like what is something or some things that you wish you'd had, maybe even like going into marriage as well as within marriage, even if it was just counsel from somebody? I mean, a lot of times we do like the marriage counseling for a few months before getting married, and then it's just like, all right, you guys are, we check the box, like I'll marry you guys, and that's it. I was talking to a friend recently about marriage, and he brought up two things. He said if that's something that a man is thinking about doing with a woman pursuing marriage, one is you don't have to necessarily conceive of yourself as a good man, but becoming the man you long to be. So making sure that character formation is in place and that trajectory. And the second one is he's saying invite couples in your lives who are important to both of you to be present with you throughout just the dating and then the engagement process.
Yes.
And so that's obviously much more organic, and it starts a long while before even the marriage counseling begins, and it seems a little bit more holistic.
Yes.
Relationally, and even with accountability, they can ask you those kinds of things, and they're in your life. They see those character flaws, and they're present in those things. So it seems like a different, just a different way of doing things. So I was just curious, what are some of the things you wish you'd had?
Well, I wish I had someone that asked the harder questions. Premarital covers a lot of others, a lot of broad topics. But the problem is they didn't really ask the personal question. I wish someone would have asked about it. As a matter of fact, most of my girlfriends and things, when I say, when your daughters get married, you need to ask about sexual addiction, porn, masturbation, all those things. You need to ask that. And I know that sounds weird, but the fact is that the more you know going in, the better off it is. Joel did not confess to me about that, so I was a little blindsided by that. And my eyes just went open. I had to like catch up to understanding, okay, what is this sexual addiction? What does this mean for me, for my marriage, all that kind of thing. And so one of the things our church is doing, which we're going to start to do, because we realize that couples, when they go through premarital, we kind of just dump them in premarital and expect everything to be fine. And we know that they're in love at this stage, but, you know, we want to be able to track them a year out. So what we're trying to develop is going from the premarital, which is something I wish we had, was a mentor couple, is taking this group of people that have been together, maybe 10 or 15 couples that have been together for 8 to 10 weeks, that are going through the premarital, is then put them into a bigger group with a mentor marriage couple and track them for a year so that they have something that they can go to this couple with, or things can go up. So we're going to develop more curriculum that will be during that time to go deeper, and hopefully then they will hopefully go up into their own small groups and then, you know, continue on. And they always have that couple coming back to them to say, hey, listen, you know us. This is going on. What can we do? So that they have that vulnerability.
Yeah. That sounds awesome. You guys are in the works.
We're in the works.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. I love that. That's so similar to even what I was just describing. That it's actually, it's uncanny. That's cool. A lot of people don't necessarily know the harm of this stuff, especially kind of the fallout on a spouse or whatever. I know I have a friend, and she found out even like that her brothers, like later on in life, were addicted to this stuff, and all of a sudden, like, her trust just like how do you view me? You know, like, not like in necessarily like a predatorial sense, but like if you're spending that much time sexualizing the people around you, then that's how you that's your moral system, and that's how you're going to evaluate the people around you. And
the objectification of women.
Yeah, like oh, you look good, you know, and then all of a sudden we reduce people to how they look, you know, instead of who they are.
Yes.
I was just curious about how you've, well, yeah, I guess specifically with like your own identity, how that impacted you and how you see it impact the people around you. Because like I mentioned earlier, it is much more mainline. I had a friend, she was talking to a group of guys the other day, and the guys were saying, well, it's not that big of an issue because everyone does it.
Yeah, that is like the party line right now.
Yeah, very much so. We just put out an article recently, Allie wrote it, on couples that use porn in their relationships.
Yes.
You know? And like really hard quotes of like women saying, okay, like I tried to embrace the fantasy with him, but it took over our reality.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, and one woman, it's strong language, but she said after a while, I just felt like a bag of flesh that he was masturbating into.
Yes.
You know, which is like, God, that's a heavy thing to say. Yep. So I think like the data, whether it's stories or science, is there, but I would love to hear kind of your articulation on some of that stuff.
Yeah,
as well.
you know, it is really hard because it when you objectify and you're doing all this, it really leaves that emotional connection down. And regardless of how women, I mean, everybody always looks at women are emotional, we're more relational. Well, that's true, but at the same time, God made you guys just as emotional and just as relational.
Yeah.
And so it's important to remember that. And so when you get into this addiction and you objectify, it leaves that emotional piece out. And so women, like when we start to feel it, that's when we'll start to nag or we'll be screaming, I need you to hear me. I need you to understand me. But that it's just not there anymore. And so it really is hard. And not believing lies. Because what we have is that a lot of single men come into marriage thinking, oh, once they can have sex all the time, or, you know.
Yes, very much, yeah.
Then then
the problems will go away.
That's right.
Yeah.
It'll be fine. So I don't really need to confess it. Or, even women think that, oh, yeah, he had a problem before we were married, but it'll go away. But you see, it's not just a sexual issue. As a matter of fact, it very much isn't. It's much more about relational connection.
Yeah.
It's about emotion. It's about, so much more that it interferes with every aspect of your married life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is a soul issue.
Yes.
At that level, it's a way of being known the way you want to be known, right? Micromanaging being known, but then also hiding, and even insulating ourselves from pain. Like, people go to porn when they're bored, when they hurt, when they're happy. So
Yes.
even the neural pathways that compel people, it's wild. Yeah. So your natural reaction to celebrating is to treat yourself, right?
Yes.
And when I'm bored, right, all of a sudden, almost any human emotion triggers that kind of outlet, which implies that it's not at all, right? It's just about the sex. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Or the hormones.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Instead of taking that and either funneling it to God or to funneling it to enjoying with your wife.
Yeah.
And that really puts a damper on things. And what makes it so difficult, Shane, is that it really does, even though we always tell people it's not personal, but to women, it becomes very personal. You wonder about, what is he comparing me to what he's looking at? I'm going to come up short. I'm never going to be enough for him. Yeah. And that's where women get into compromising, because then he will want something more. And so you compromise in areas that you probably wouldn't compromise because you want to be that for him. But realizing that that's a lie too, because it's never going to be enough.
Right. That's the competition of competing with a fantasy, right? Yeah. The fantasy piece. The when this issue hits, a lot of I've spoken. I mean, that's a huge part of what we do. But I've spoken with so many women where they're confused. They question, did their vows mean anything? Did he ever love me? I'm not good enough. I need to be better. All sorts of things. So you spoke into. Yeah, you having to reorient, where it's at first you tried to do this. After a while you're I can't fix him, right? I can't control that. But what I can do is know him and let him know me. And he said that was about 2 years where you finally felt stabilized with Jesus, and you're just, okay, I am Theresa and I'm beautiful and precious, right? How long was it then to recreate this? To feel stable with you and him, did it follow the same kind of pattern?
It followed the same kind of pattern.
That's cool.
Yeah. And Joel was, like I told you, he was really good about telling me what he was learning, all those kinds of things. And he made an about face. His repentance was remarkable. I mean, it went from one thing to another. So that really did encourage and help me and create a safe environment for us to be vulnerable and open with one another about where we're at. And it helped create that connection piece that was missing early on in our marriage, which was communication, deep thoughts and deep emotions, where it had been gone. There was just nothing that was allowing that.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, he even went so far as I think you guys got rid of the TV for a year and stopped subscribing to certain magazines. So even catalogs for Kohl's and things like that couldn't come in, where there was the possibility of
Victoria's
a lingerie
Secrets,
section.
Any of that kind of thing. We got rid of it all, and that was part of what God told me. And there was times during this, and because women get very angry, and I totally understand that, because I was really angry when this all came up. I was surprised, I was angry, I was shocked, and so I had a period of really okay, Lord, what the heck are you doing here? I'm not a happy camper. This isn't what I signed up for. And it was really something what I had to do is I had to realize the Lord just said we to me. This isn't a him problem. You're not going to just send him off somewhere and get him fixed and then he comes back into the marriage. This has been involving you, and you need to be able to get on board with this. Not that we are responsible.
Yeah.
I'm responsible for Joel's behavior, but I need to be part of the solution and not part of the problem.
Yeah.
And that's where we have to go to. And that's why my spiritual development with the Lord and with Jesus needs to be central to the relationship here that we have, because otherwise it's just not going to work. If I'm going to, you just get fixed and come back, that wasn't the peace, because it was an emotional connected peace, not just him that caused the problem. I was part of the problem, and I needed to get part of the solution.
Primarily, like you said earlier, by not pressing into those moments when you could intuit something was wrong, or even maybe not even being honest about like where you're at with your day, right? Because he's a guy, he doesn't want to hear it or whatever, or he's just in a mood. I think it seems like a lot of people get married and just assume that that's the standard for a relationship, and how would you encourage couples to practice? It really is a practice in vulnerability. It's certainly like communication, but it is more than just learning to communicate. They always say that, like, just practice communicating.
Yeah,
it's
do
like,
reflective
no.
listening, all
that
those other great things.
It's like, no, like, this is where my soul's at, like, this is how I'm doing today. These are the things that made me anxious.
Yes.
And like wanting somebody to know your soul. So like how can people practice that together?
It's not easy, especially especially since you are connected, that if you think your spouse is doing something they're not supposed to be doing, your immediate reaction is don't do that, or preach at them.
Yes.
And so part of it is providing and allowing this safe environment where there is this safe environment where people can come, he can come and say, this is where I'm at, or I can come and say, this is where I'm at, without judgment. And that's a hard thing, because you have to be okay. You have to be okay with where the Lord, that we have two sinful people living in the home, trying to have a great marriage, and failing to some degree. I mean, we all do. I mean, that's the fact of life. We're just sinful creatures, and we're just not going to get it. But the fact is that providing that safety is something that needs to happen, but you have to be okay with the truth, and okay that they're allowed to fail. You know what? Most women don't want their husbands failing. It creates insecurity and a place where they don't want to go. So if they're failing at something, they just want, no. I don't want to hear that. But the fact is we all fail, and it's okay to fail and pick yourself up and be all right. And you got to be okay with that.
That's hard, isn't it?
It is hard.
It's so hard.
It
Even
is
listening to
very
it, it's like, because it's necessary for other sins, like you don't, like practicing not swearing or not drinking or like not smoking, like all those things like require a lot of time, and we learn by the grace God shows us when he picks us up.
That's right.
Like it's the goodness of God that leads men and women to repentance. Right?
Yes.
That's what Paul says there in Romans.
That's right.
But it's, for whatever reason, like even like in me, like it's a harder pill to swallow when it comes to this issue, because there is that delusion that like that our sins only affect us. But then when it's something like infidelity in marriage, all of a sudden it impacts somebody else, and asking someone else to put up with that. So it's helpful to hear you say, where it's like, no, like ladies, like stand with him. Don't obviously don't tolerate it. It's not something you tolerate,
right?
But it is something you journey through together,
right? Because our sin is no different.
Yeah.
And that's where you got to really, because we're so hurt by the infidelity or what happened, that we look at it like this is worse than whatever I have ever done. And that's not how God looks at it. And we need to really come to that Jesus moment where, like, okay, this is not, my sin is just as bad. And who am I to withhold forgiveness or whatever I have to do to reconcile this relationship just because I'm hurt?
Yeah. Would you say that holds true even in needing to create boundaries?
Mm-hmm.
Like creating boundaries and offering forgiveness aren't mutually exclusive.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But that's something that can be developed during that time of where the people are, like with Joel and I, we were just making sure that we were communicating, making sure we stayed in touch. It's just it is very difficult. It's not easy, and they have to be a little fluid in some, because there's some things that'll be different for each other, and you got to be able to work to compromise in those areas with each other and what you guys need.
Yeah.
Like for TV, I'm a Star Trek fan. I said, Joel, please let me watch my Star Trek. So he said during the day when I can come home, I can watch Star Trek. So that was a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Compromise.
But
Yeah.
but I wasn't going to watch TV when he was home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Joel confesses he feels great. There was probably like moments where like when he's doing really well and you're like, oh, we got it. We're doing fine, you know? And a lot of both of the people involved in that relationship encountering that kind of emotional high where it's like, oh, we got better and we're doing better and he shared and he's letting me know him and all those things. They use that as a reason maybe to not then bring community into it or to confess outside of just the relationship. And obviously don't just, not everything is for everyone. You don't just share your junk on Facebook, So like there is like some kind of prudent and wise way of going about that. I reckon you'd probably encourage people to bring in community into that.
Yes.
Could you speak into that a little bit?
Yeah, it's just the same. You have to find some safe people that that won't, because a lot of women, what they do is they just hold on to this because they don't want their husband to be embarrassed by that. And frankly, we are embarrassed by it.
Yes, there's shame on both ends.
There's shame on both ends, and so you want to hide, and that is just not right. The whole thing is get it out in the light. But there are some women that indiscriminately tell everyone, family, everyone, and not everybody can hear this and then look at something different. Look at someone different, because what ends up happening is maybe you're really good in a year, but your family and other friends are looking at like, oh, he's such a creep. I can't believe she stayed married to him. And so it's really important to get a few people, not a lot, but a few people around that you can trust and that are safe people that you can go to be able to do this, because it's important to have that accountability for you. But also, the man has to be able to release his wife to do that as well, because I know that it's really hard to do that, and to invite that. And the fact is we're all fearful of what people think of us, and that's one of the things that holds us back.
For sure.
What will they think? Are they going to think he's a pedophile? Because being addicted to porn and masturbation is that. When we're dealing with pedophilia, that's a totally different ball of wax. But that's what some people think. And it's like, no, that's not what we're going here. So, but you let those fears and those thoughts stop you from really getting the help that you need. And you need to do that. And a good trusted counselor would be very helpful to be able to help you navigate those things as well. That's also very good. I had some really good people in my life that I could just share with that journeyed alongside us that really helped. And that didn't judge us at all.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was
That's
great.
awesome. Thank you for speaking to that specifically. It's intuitively important, but what's not intuitive is how to do it. It's like for a guy, if it's like, well, sharing with your wife all of a sudden brought freedom to your soul, then it only makes sense to continue to live in light. Right? But how to do that rightly and well. I've seen even some guys where it's like, oh, like living in the light, like I feel so good, I'm going to tell everybody,
Yeah.
And then when they fail, then there's more shame, and so they hide in deeper darkness.
Right.
Yeah.
But you see, that's part of the issue. It's got to be okay to
fail in the light.
Right.
It's okay to
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I dig it. When I was editing through Allie's article, always looking at like it's like a cultural phenomenon. Whenever I'm looking at like kind of a cultural phenomenon or some kind of issue, I always want to ask the question, like, where's the good news? How does the good news speak into this? What is the good news needed for this? So like, where is the gospel? And so specifically for the last one of women who allow porn to come into their relationship and try and partake in it with their spouse to draw out to as a kind of aid for intimacy. It struck me how messed up we are and how faithful Jesus is to us. And at no point does he say, I know you'll always fail, so I'm going to supplement our relationship with something better. And if you could try and get on board with this other thing, then it'll spruce things up in our relationship. He is just like, man, like I wake up every day and he's still there. You know, he's just so faithful. It is incredible. So when you say like you needed to work on this, be interested just to hear some of those pieces for you that like were just really important. Some of the things you needed to hear him say, some of the things you needed to ask him, right? Some of the places you needed to sit with him in.
Yeah. First of all, it was important for me to realize, because, you know, when this is going on, your emotions are all up and down. You're angry, you're okay one minute, then you're furious the next. I mean, there are times I really want to scratch Joel's eyes out. I mean, let's face it. I was like, I'm just like, this is awful. I can't believe I'm going through this. But there's places I had to realize is that there's an anchor. And what did that anchor look like? And it had to be God. So I really focused on what was God teaching me, not about the circumstances, because we have a ton of self-help books that'll tell you all about your circumstances and how you can get through it. I mean, it doesn't even have to be Christian self-help. There's a ton of it out there. But the one thing that we have and that I really relied on was we have God's character. And I had to think, okay, Lord, what do you want me to see about who you are in the midst of this that I know I always have? I needed an anchor that would stop me from going so far down and so far up and getting weird thoughts, because you can get in a really dark place. And that's really hard for some women, because we have to battle that, because we have fears and worries. I mean, that's what women do. We think things and we mull things over. And it was hard. So the one thing that he showed me was faith. I am faithful. And so that's something I really focused on. I memorized Hebrews 11 and 12. And it was part of that whole memorization and realizing God's faithfulness that I was able to show Joel what faithfulness looked like in a marriage. Because I was reflecting back what God was doing. Not that I was perfect at it, because believe me, anybody that knows Theresa knows I am far from perfect. But the fact is that's what I was doing. So this part of my journey through this part of our marriage has been about trust. God is showing me, okay, I don't want to have to every time to show you my faithfulness. I want you, when I bring something into your life, even if it's not a good thing, what it doesn't view as a good thing, even if you and Joel fail at something, I want you to trust I put this or allowed this in your life so that you can know me more. And so that's really that's what really helped me focus, was finding about God's character and who he is. Like this whole thing this year for me is learning, was new. It's about new for me. It's about, okay, God, I want a new and a fresh look at who you are. Not who I think you were or who I've been, because I've been really journeying with that, going through the Old Testament and New Testament survey stuff. And I really want a new, fresh look at who you are in my life and how I can convey that newness to others. So that's really where it took. I really had to. And I'm a big scripture memory person. So it really helps those dark thoughts, those whirling thoughts, when I get in places where I shouldn't be. Just, okay, therefore, since through God's mercy we have this ministry, we do not lose heart. You know, going through all my verses, and it reorients me.
It's the right Hebrew chapters to memorize in that kind of situation.
Oh yeah, now faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see.
And then just like story after story of people being faithful even when it hurts. You know, like even when they died, you know, just
I know.
grueling stuff.
One of the biggest things was that passage in Abraham reasoned that God could raise the dead when he was going to sacrifice Isaac. I thought, for a long time, I thought, he knew something about God I didn't. It never had been done before. How could he even reason it? It doesn't even make sense. So I realized I needed to know something about God that he knew. And that's what I had to do. I had to go on a journey with God. And that's what I encourage all the women to do. That's why the Proven Wives study is all about our relationship with God, not trying to get fixed. I can't tell you how many women have come to me and saying, I thought this study was about how we were going to fix the guys. No, it's not going to do that. You're going to be very disappointed in this study if that's what you're going for. It's really about our relationship with God.
Yeah, it's a different sort of paradigm to view him as a person, as opposed to kind of a theology in the sky. Like, even like as image bearers, like when I see something bad or encounter something bad, the pain I feel is a reflection of the pain God feels. Right? Like, that dignifies pain in a really beautiful sort of way that doesn't allow us to then do whatever we want with that pain.
Right.
But like it's an invitation to come and feel with God. Right? And to come say, like, God, you feel this all the time, you know? And to like know him that way, it's a very sacred thing
It
that he
is.
invites us into. I think it is a part of our Imago Dei, being made in the image of God, and not just dignifying reason, but also the things we experience, the things we feel. You know, the things we feel. A very close friend of mine when I was in middle school was sexually abused, and I got really angry at God. And a lot of people said, this is for God's glory. You just need to say he's good, you know? And I was like, well, he raped her for his glory, and I'm supposed to bite my lip and say he's good? Like, no thank you.
It doesn't reconcile.
No thank you, yeah. And I do wish somebody had just pulled me aside and just said, Shane, the pain you feel is the pain God feels. Right? Like, he felt it so deeply, he died for it. Right? It took him to a cross because he couldn't stand it any longer.
Right.
Right.
And part of that is, Shane, is that people are used to managing everybody else. We don't want people to feel pain, feel grief, feel things. So we try to manage them to make it better for us and for them. But the fact is that some people need to grieve.
Yeah.
They need to express their pain. It's not that the Lord wouldn't allow it. I mean, we have Psalm and different kinds of books in the Old Testament that were all about the Israelites lamenting over their plight of being in exile. God allowed them to do that. He gave them a book to be able to do that. So we should be able to do that and let others do that. You have to be comfortable with your own pain and that it's okay for others to experience pain. And part of that is, and that's why men, when they first come, they feel great, and then the wife gets the thing, and then the woman explodes, and then the guy's like, no, you can't get angry with me, or I'm never going to tell her something else because I don't want her to get angry. It's a natural process to experience.
Yeah, it's striking to me that Jesus knew he was going to raise Lazarus from the dead, but he gave himself time to lament even the death, the initial death, you know, and he just wept bitterly.
Yes.
Like from his gut, from his viscera, he cried, and then he raised him from the dead. He could have just sidestepped the whole emotion.
Yes.
Rose him from the dead, but like he did. He is living in his humanity, you know, which is made in the image of God.
That's
right.
right.
You know, so like just giving himself time to lament.
That's right.
Really
That's why we
cool.
have a high priest who can sympathize with all of our weaknesses. And it's important that we remember that we are sinful, and it's okay for us to allow others to do that as well.
Yes and amen. That'll preach.
Yeah.
I like it. Theresa, final word? Anything else you want to share? Everything's just been amazing. Really love you and your husband a lot.
Oh.
You guys are dear friends in my life.
Yeah, well, you guys are incredible for us. We're always like, oh, keep it going. They're so great. So.
Yeah, we all appreciate having you as both kind of older brothers, older brother and older sister in our life.
Oh,
but
you're
also
so
just,
nice.
Just
Not saying parents.
You guys are amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Love having you as an older sister.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, Shane.
Yeah, for sure. Good.
Good.
Sweet. Guys, thank you so much for just being with us today. Theressa, thank you for being with us. We will have Joel's podcast in the show notes, as well as the article that I was referencing. Also, we have resources, one for women who struggle with this issue, because it's not just a guy's thing. It's called Proven Women. We'll have that in the show notes, as well as Proven Wives. Proven Women is a 12-week study. Proven Wives is an 8-week study, and it walks wives through this encounter of realizing that their spouse has been unfaithful to them, either with a digital mistress or an actual one. And both are just incredible resources. I helped edit them and spent a lot of time crying while I was just working through them. Just really invaluable stuff. So reach out to us. We are thankful for you guys. Thanks for being with us, and look forward to next time.
Hey guys, thank you so much for taking the time to watch the Proven Men YouTube channel. If you would like to see more encouraging Proven Men content, subscribe to our channel and you'll be sure not to miss a thing. And if you feel as Proven Men's impacted you and you'd like to partner with us to continue to reach others, please consider clicking the link in the description below to give today. Thank you so much again for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.